Assalamu alaikum, hello, and welcome to the News and Culture Show. I'm Laura Conda, the host, and I've got my fellow host here, Paul.
Wa alaikum salam.
Walaikum salam. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, not too bad. Oh gosh, the 3-day weekend, I was absolutely exhausted. I think Monday I went back to work for a rest. I woke up in the morning. I thought, how am I going to get out of bed? And I arrived at work, and the boss looked at me as I went in, and he said, "Don't need to ask you if you had a good weekend, then, Paul." I said, "Oh, I'm exhausted." Yeah.
So it was a good Eid then?
Well, Friday I was cooking, so I was cooking from about 11, and then I stopped to go to Jummah. Came back, and then I started straight away, and then I was cooking again until 3 o'clock.
Wow.
And I didn't complain about it because I thought, oh crumbs, if this is what it's like when you do one of these big dawah events, I thought I'm not going to say anything because my wife usually does them. So yeah,
Well,
I got to say actually, I really realised, gentlemen, everyone listening, when you have Eid, all I can say is, haven't had to cook on the barbecue this year, thank your wives for making the Eid for you. It really made me realise just how hard it is to get all of this done. Yes, subhanAllah, I'm just a weak, pathetic man, what can I say?
SubhanAllah. May Allah bless your wife for all her hard work, in fairness.
4:30, I went upstairs. I just popped to the loo.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I'll just sit down on the bed for a little while. I sat down. I fell asleep.
Yeah, I knew that you were going to say that.
I didn't wake up till 6 o'clock.
I knew you were going to say you fell asleep.
Yeah.
Was the food enjoyable though? Did you enjoy the food that you cooked at least?
To be fair, everybody did love it.
Yeah.
Everybody said, especially the burgers. They said the burgers came out really well. So
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
just a
alhamdulillah.
shame about the weather on Saturday. It was pretty...
Well, actually, when I started cooking Friday morning, I was I was standing there with a massive umbrella
Because it was raining.
it was raining
Monday,
in the
Friday morning.
It was raining in the morning, but alhamdulillah, in the afternoon after Jummah, it was dry. So.
It was.
So, and that was when I did the burgers. So yeah, so
We were blessed with at least one day of good weather on Eid, but yeah, Saturday was a washout. Inspired Eid was very wet. Inspired Eid on Saturday.
yeah, I couldn't go either day. Saturday, I had to go to London because Fatima's family, my wife, they all live in London, so we had to go down there to my mother-in-law's and my father-in-law's, and then Sunday, we had to go to Leicester to see my wife's auntie. So yeah.
Busy weekend.
Monday morning, I thought, God, how am I actually going to get to work this morning? Alhamdulillah, I got through.
You did.
Yeah,
Alhamdulillah. Well, should we get on with the news this week? What is going on in Luton? And there's quite a lot actually. It's a busy week. Been a very busy week. So the police are launching a new County Lines film. It's called Save Bedfordshire's Lost Boys, and
This is the one with the VR headsets.
This is the one with the VR headset. So
Yeah,
if you follow,
I saw that on the BBC News. It looks really interesting.
the Bedfordshire Police have put up a lot about it as well, and I think this is a first of its kind. We don't know if any Bedfordshire Police say they don't think of any other police force has created something like this that's so kind of well thought out. While it is a fictional story, it's a very real story for many children across the country, and I think showing children in this way where you can experience it, you can almost visualize it, you're in that story, you're looking at it through his eyes. I think it's a really clever way of showing children what the reality is of being involved in county lines or drug dealing or anything like that.
Actually, this is really important. I mean as a teacher for most of my life, we get training on this, and many parents won't be aware. But your children actually get targeted by drug dealers, and the reason is they have the thinking, if it's young children that they've got doing the introductions and the dealings, they think that the police are not going to be looking out for them. So this is what a lot of our parents don't realise. Our children, it's a pernicious thing these dealers get involved in, but they actually actively look for youngsters that they can actually groom and pull into the gang and work for them, because like I said, they've got this idea that the police just aren't going to be looking for kids dealing it.
No, it's true.
I mean, it's shocking to think how much things have changed, and to the great depravity that these criminals will go to, but unfortunately that's what goes on now.
And unfortunately it does perpetuate a lot of other crime, and it's not just people that live in Luton that are at risk. There's children across the county are at risk. You know, they acknowledge that even children living in the villages around Bedfordshire are at risk of being involved in county lines because, you know, I think parents are very unaware. They think that crime doesn't happen in these small little places and that their children are not at risk. So therefore they probably don't know what the warning signs are anyway, because I think there's the Bedfordshire Police have been fantastic in kind of encouraging parents to know the warning signs or know what's happening. And I think it's really good that they are doing something like this and getting it out there, because there will be parents that have no clue what to look for.
Yeah. We've got a quote here, but by actually from Superintendent Alex House from Bedfordshire Police, and he's actually said, county drugs lines underpin much of the violence and antisocial behaviour that is happening across the county, and has a real impact on victims in Bedfordshire. Incidentally, the reason, do you know why it is that they call it this county lines? Do you know?
No, because I think I don't actually know, because I know it's a phrase and a lot of people might not understand what county lines means. So you kind of got the area of expertise in this because you've done the training.
Well, they have. So the criminals have got the idea is that if they're involving children that are going from one county to another, and involved in the children moving from one part to the other, it disrupts the cohesive approach of the police forces between one locality and the next. So because of this is why they specifically target the kids to go across from one area to the next, because you've then got a transfer, as it were, of responsibility from one area to another, and then of course they've got the idea that it's losing that sort of joined up approach to targeting the criminals.
Well, I think that is a problem, because not so much now, but in the beginning I think police were not communicating with each other. Perhaps if a child went missing in Bedfordshire and turned up in Northampton, there was no kind of look at why that has happened and why that child had ended up there. But I think it's fantastic they're doing this. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be available around schools across the county. The police are taking it into there. They have got it up on social media as well. So if you're interested in finding out about county lines or just learning a little bit more about it, especially if you're a parent, you want to know what the signs are, definitely go to Bedfordshire Police's social media, YouTube, Facebook. It is available on there, and they do extensive kind of education on there as well. So I think it's worth having a look at.
It might be helpful, actually, perhaps if we just discuss with the listeners the specific signs. There's about 5 or 6 signs for parents and teachers to look for. So the first one is repeat. So if, for example, you notice your son or your daughter repeatedly going missing from school or home, and also if you get a call, they've got stuck and they're in other areas, not the local area, that's a sign that they're getting involved in one of these gangs. Because if you think about it logically, there wouldn't be a reason. Say, for example, if you're in Luton and then you suddenly find, your child is in, say, Hitchin or St Albans, something like that. And if they come up with an excuse that doesn't sound very valid, be suspicious, and keep this in your mindset. Next one. Remember, your son or daughter is going to be given money by these people, and they're going to be enticed to. So what these criminals will do, they try to, well, not try. They actively work hard at building a really strong, trusting, almost like a love bond, like a big brother or sister bond that they will have with the children that they're grooming. So things so for example, that they may have a lot of money with them. If you notice them having new designer clothes or fancy electronic devices or phones, and the key thing is quiz them. How did they get these? Where did they get the money from? And most of the time, of course, your children aren't going to come up with a realistic excuse. and it won't. The information they give you just won't sit right. Okay, and it's easy as parents. We can often think that our son or daughter is wonderful, but of course they're going to lie and protect the person that has given these things, because they think, wow, I wouldn't get these things or these designer clothes any other way. Next thing, if you notice them spending a lot of time on the phone, texting, or odd phone calls at funny hours. That's the key thing, at odd hours. Remember, a lot of these people, they're doing their drug deals at odd hours of the night. If you notice these things, again, here's another warning sign. Do you want to go through the next?
Yeah, decline in school or work performance. So if they have a job or they're at school, they suddenly are not doing as well as they were before. I definitely think that's a huge sign.
Yeah.
And significant changes in emotional and physical well-being as well. So they might be more moody, they might be upset a lot of the time. I think it's hard to tell when you've got a teenager, because they are like that quite a lot of the time anyway. That is kind of the natural cycle, but you know, if they seem to significantly change, very upset, very worried, very quiet, very timid suddenly, that's perhaps a sign. And I think these are all things that we should be looking out for as parents, especially if you've got teenagers, but even younger children as well, because it does start earlier than that. But yeah.
I mean, what I'd suggest as a first point to parents, if you're worried, phone your school and ask, and there's in every school, primary, middle schools, secondary schools, there is always a designated safeguarding officer. So ask to speak to the safeguarding officer, and if they're not available, I mean, they may be teaching, ask for a call back. And once you do that formally, they will document everything you say, and that will bring your child up on the radar. And then they can actually then start to quiz members of staff in school to see if they can triangulate any odd things that some teachers are then seeing, to then see if there's anything that they can corroborate with your worries and concerns. And please be aware, no school is going to look at you badly for doing this. Remember, your schools are there to help you, and they will view this as a positive attempt at you reaching out. So if you see any of these signs in your son or daughter, don't be shy to contact your school, because they might have other information you weren't aware of. And then you get the picture that's happening in school, you'll think, this is starting to make a lot more sense. And then between you and them, you might be able to get a much stronger picture of what's going on.
Right, well, on to the next story, and it kind of affects both of us. We've mentioned it before. We are both quite asthmatic in our age, but emergency hospital admissions for respiratory diseases have risen across Luton. It's risen by 6%. So previously in 2022 to 2023, it was 14,390. And then the last year, so 2023 to 2024, it was 15,325, which is quite a significant jump, I think.
It's gone up almost 1,000.
Yeah.
Just under 1,000.
So even across the UK, there was 854,922 A&E admissions because of respiratory disease. So a lot of people...
That is shocking, actually,
that
isn't it?
I mean, quite a few of them are me. Because I've had about 10 asthma attacks in the last year. It's got significantly worse. So.
I've been quite fortunate, actually. I've only actually had to go to hospital once, which was about 6 years ago. And since then, the consultant spoke to me when I had to go in.
Yeah.
And he just said to me, he said, look, Paul, he said, now this has happened to you. He said, remember what's happened. The difficulty is when your breathing starts getting bad.
Yeah.
It gradually worsens, and you think it hasn't got massively worse since it first started. But what he said to me, he said, look, be very aware, when you get to the point it's finding difficult, don't wait any longer. get on the phone to the GP straight away and then get the emergency treatment, which for me is I have to take the steroid tablets.
Yep, same
for
here as well.
6 days. And since I've done that, I've been a lot more proactive rather than waiting too long. I haven't had to go to hospital, so I've only had to go to hospital once in the last 6 years.
Unfortunately,
That was during COVID, actually.
Yeah, mine are very sudden, so I can't always get to the GP because it will just happen.
Yeah.
But it's when
I remember I went into hospital and I came back out a couple of days later. I went back to work. I was at Cardinal Newman, and I went back. I went back to work. There was nobody there. They'd sent 2 whole year groups home because of COVID. Because they had all these things. They called them bubbles.
Yeah.
So the big bubbles they put the year groups together.
Yeah.
So if they had too much COVID going on in a year group, they had to send them all home.
The whole year group home.
I went back to work. There was nobody
there. There's no children to
Yeah.
teach. But yeah, respiratory disease is actually the 3rd biggest cause of death in England. So a lot of people are probably thinking, well, what is respiratory disease? It's diseases such as asthma, pneumonia, COPD, so chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and lung cancer as well. So it's not just, little things. It's quite bad things to have, and they are linked to things like smoking, air pollution, which is obviously a big issue when you live quite close to an airport, and things like exposure to hazardous materials as well, like asbestos. I know there's currently actually a study being done in Luton and London into the quality of air and how it affects the young children in the town. It's been going on for quite a number of years now, and I'm going to be really interested to see the results of that, because I think we've had obviously cases recently, like the young girl that lived off the South Circular in London being the first ever death that was caused by air pollution, which is incredibly maddening to think that is such an issue, and that a child in their own home died as a result of that. And
instantly, I remember a few years ago, I worked at Cholney High School for Girls, and so that was rebuilt perhaps about 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And none, when I say none, I literally mean none of the windows, you can open them. So the air system there, all of the fresh air, it's all on a filtration system.
Yeah, it needs to be, because they're so close to the M1 there,
yeah.
aren't they?
And then a few years later, I worked at the boys' school, which of course hasn't been rebuilt, and that's just like a standard old building back from the late 50s, early 60s, and the difference in the air quality, you can really notice the difference between the 2 buildings.
Yeah.
Because of course it's right next to the M1.
Yeah.
The M1 literally drives
past it,
right down the border of the playing fields of the 2 schools. Yeah.
But also,
so I would suspect that the air quality
of
the motorway,
is very poor as well.
Isn't that good here.
We've, everyone talks about how great the transport links are in Luton, but perhaps it's actually quite a lot of people causing a lot of problems, respiratory problems for people. Also, poorer communities are more at risk as well, and we know that deprivation is a huge issue in Luton. There's many people that are living below the poverty line, and there's many issues with houses with mould and stuff like that. These are all problems that lead to respiratory diseases and cause issues. But if you want a GP appointment though in Luton, Paul, you're 16% more likely to get one. Well, not 16%. They're offering 16% more GP appointments.
You're going to think I'm crazy at this one. My GP is in London still.
No, do you know what?
So I moved here in 1998, but my GP is still in Willesden Green.
That is, I nearly stayed, because I've moved back to Luton in the last sort of less than a year, from Rickmansworth when I was living there for 5 years. I could always get a GP appointment. I was really worried about moving back here and thinking, I'm never going to be able to get a GP. But my GP is fantastic. I can get in same day. I haven't ever had an issue getting an appointment with my GP. So people will complain about they can't get a GP appointment. I'm like, I've never had an issue.
My mother's 89. She lives here as well, and she has terrible trouble, literally terrible trouble.
That's really surprising.
Yeah,
it's really surprising how varied it is. Even if you live in Luton.
Well, this is why I've stayed where I am, simply because if you phone up, you will always get a call back every single
Yeah.
time. Without fail, I've never had a situation where the same day I either can't get an appointment where I just drives out and it takes about 45 minutes to get there, or they have this video callback system.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
And you just hold your phone, you're sitting there and you're having a chat with the GP in front of you.
I've even had things before where you can send pictures. So if it was like to look at a rash or something, you can send them like a picture through a secure system so that only the doctor can access it to be able to like review it.
My GP's really pushy because I got diagnosed with diabetes in October.
Okay.
And I kept getting these texts saying, "Oh, Dr. Cooper, you need to come in for your diabetes check." And I just looked at it and I thought, "Oh God, I've only just been diagnosed. I can't be bothered with all that." So I kept ignoring these texts. And then round about January time, that's it. They wouldn't have it. They actually phoned me up.
I'm not surprised.
So I actually had the practice nurse, and he phoned me up, and he says, "Dr. Cooper, I need you to come in. You have to come in."
Yeah.
I said, "Why? What's the matter?" He said, "You've got to do your diabetes check." And then honestly, he was so forthright and pushy. I thought, okay, right, I'm just going to give in and acquiesce. And I said, okay. So I just went in because I thought otherwise they're not going to start phoning me. So yeah, there's no getting away from my GP. They won't let you not go in if they want to see you. So that's a sign of a good GP.
I was going to say, listeners, please do not take Paul's advice. You should always go and have your diabetes checks. And you should always go to the GP, especially when they're pushing you to do something. Do not listen to Paul.
No, sorry, listen. This is only because back in the day, I actually qualified as a doctor. So,
yes.
so when I got diagnosed with diabetes, which was only recently in October, I keep a check on myself, like all of my pulses on my feet, and check everything's fine. So I thought, everything's okay. But yeah, the practice nurse wouldn't have it. I had to go in.
People who work in healthcare are the worst sometimes at looking after themselves. But there are 44% of the appointments, according to the figures, were provided the same day, so as they were booked, which is compared to 39% the year earlier.
So things are improving.
Yeah, massively. And 2/3 of those appointments, or 67%, were face-to-face as well. So it wasn't just a phone call either. So they're really doing a lot. It's not just in Luton, though. It is in Bedfordshire too, because it's part of the across-the-board thing that we have, the Bedfordshire, Luton and Milton Keynes Integrated Care Board. But I think this is really positive because I think a lot of people, if they were able to be seen by GPs, it would prevent a lot of people from attending A&E, and then as a result, that becomes an issue as well.
Yeah. I mean, the other so I'm just reading here.
Yeah.
And I found this interesting as well. Some of the practices now, they're having things like an in-house physiotherapist.
Yes.
And the reason why they've done this, and even me as a previous medic, I didn't know this. So as many as 30% of people that go into the GP, it's due to aches or pains from muscles or your skeleton, musculoskeletal. So what they're doing is involving them as quickly as possible to see a physiotherapist.
Yeah.
To get an idea. Well, is there something by monitoring the mobility of the affected joint and the muscles of the area? If direct early intervention can help. And I have to say, I would have loved something like this many years ago. 7 years back, I'm just trying to think there. 7 years ago, I broke my leg. I broke my ankle in 2 places. Now your bones heal really fast, so within 6 weeks, my bones had healed.
Yeah.
But it's all the soft tissues around the joint.
Yeah.
So the same thing that you'd get with a really catastrophic sprain of your ankle.
Yeah.
They don't heal quickly.
No.
And if I'd have been offered physiotherapy at the time, it would have been wonderful. Do you know, to this day...
Still have issues?
Yeah.
So do I. I broke my ankle when I was 12 and I still have issues.
I have to pray sitting down now because I can't get my foot out flat under me after I've broken the leg. So if I try and sit on it, I literally can't walk afterwards. Now, if I'd have been offered physiotherapy at the same time after I broke my leg, maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, maybe.
But that didn't happen. You know, and it's quite sad because
Yeah.
experienced people that I've talked about, like orthopedic surgeons and stuff, and they say, "Oh, Paul, you know, they should have offered you physiotherapy,"
Yeah.
but I wasn't.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
But Luton train
So
station.
folks,
Okay.
if your practice is offering you that, they're doing good on you.
They are.
Yeah.
Luton train station. I don't think it's just Luton train station though as well. This is Leagrave. It's Luton and Leagrave that are a massive problem. If you do commute into London, or not necessarily London, St Albans, Harpenden, you will have been to probably either Luton or Leagrave station and seen the state of it. It is utterly awful. And so far, one councillor in Hightown, James Taylor, he was on Friday Night Live recently, I believe, as well. If I remember last week.
That wasn't with me then.
No.
No,
But he's collected 5,000 signatures from people demanding an extensive renovation of Luton train station. Particularly offering step-free access is a big issue in the town. Disabled people can't use either Luton train station or Leagrave train station. They're forced to travel to Luton Airport Parkway. And more frustratingly, train stations nearby that are on the line, such as St Albans and Harpenden, have all received lifts. Neither of them needed it. They've had renovations as well, and there's been a lot of complaints that perhaps this has been given to them by the government, because obviously the government have to fund the improvement of train stations because they are Tory areas, and this money was given to them while under the Tory government, whereas Luton was left to languish as it is a Labour area potentially. Whether that is true is to be seen.
Well, Rachel Hopkins, she's on the case now, isn't she? So
Yeah.
she's our MP for Luton and Luton South, sorry, and South Bedfordshire. So, and she's actually brought this problem up in Parliament
Multiple times, not just once, multiple times.
Yeah.
And she's been advocating it for years. It's been promised for years. It's been endless promises of it will be soon, and sorry, it never seems to happen. It was supposed to start spring of this year. They've postponed it yet again till December this year. I don't know if I'm ever going to see it in my lifetime at this rate. It feels like it's never going to be changed. So we'll see.
But it's an odd thing that we have of lack of good services in the rail system generally.
Yeah.
I mean, I recall I had to go to Moorfields recently because I had a follow-up after I had surgery on my eye. I had to have the lens replaced, and it really became... The first thing I noticed walking around was just how many underground stations have no facilities for someone who's disabled.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So there's no way of getting... And this is by far the majority of the stations. There's no
Yeah.
way of getting off the tube train and being able to get back up to ground level without walking on lots of steps.
No, there isn't.
And it really made me realise just... well, it's very discriminatory with disabled people. And
It is.
It's shocking that we've come so far and many years talking about disabled issues, and this problem still after decades. I mean, I remember this being an issue when I was in my teens, and here I am now in my late 50s, and it's still an issue that's not been properly addressed.
It hasn't. It's a shame, really. Well, that's all for the first half, but if you join us after the break, we'll be talking to someone about the big ride for Palestine that's happening this weekend, and Imrana Mahmood, who is going to be talking about Revolution Arts and all the things that they've been doing.